up and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host of Crimes Untold, and today we're going to be doing a true crime recap. So far, what has happened from the beginning of the year to now. When I'm filming this, it is January 11th. It is a Saturday. Good morning. It's bright and early in the morning. Yes. So if that piqued your interest, true crime recaps, true crime stories, vintage true crime, all of the above, I highly suggest you subscribe, turn your post notifications on to all. That way you know whenever I upload. And thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Let's get into today's. I also do want to clarify that everything I say in this video or any video that I have made is my opinion, unless it is information that has been given out about these cases or pertaining to these crimes that I'm talking about. Just want to put that out there. First things first, we're going to be discussing a murder-suicide or unaliving in a taking of one's life of a married man, married father of two, soon to be three, that involved his wife and his two children. So in West Greenwich, Rhode Island, police were called to do a well check of 39-year-old Danielle Arruda. Danielle Arruda hadn't shown up to her work in 2 days. When they got to the home, nobody answered. When they entered the home, after getting I'm pretty sure there was a warrant that they needed to get in order to go into the home, that is when they found the remains of 4, at the time, unidentified beings, because when they first released this, none of them were identified publicly. The wellness check happened at 15 Cheyenne Trail in West Greenwich at about 9:50 in the morning on January 3rd. When they arrived, they gained entry, and this is when they found the lifeless remains of that of 5-year-old Adele, 2-year-old Felix, and 39-year-old Danielle, who was 7 months pregnant with their 3rd child. They also found Nicholas Arruda, 39, that had a single GSW to the head. So Danielle, Adele, and Felix all were deceased with multiple GSWs. It is believed that Nicholas took the lives of his family and then took his own. At this time, there is still no understanding or indication as to why this happened. Such a heinous crime is committed against a family before taking their own life. Nobody really understands as to why certain things happened. What we do know is that Danielle was a paralegal, and her coworkers asked the police to do a wellness check on her because she failed to show up to work. Her being heavily pregnant, obviously you want to look into that just in case something happened to her at home. Maybe she went into labor, things like that. I understand that. And unfortunately, they found her remains. They knew something was wrong when she didn't show up to work on Friday. So she missed Thursday, and then she didn't show up on Friday, and she didn't call, which is something that she never missed work. And that was something that, like, really, if you know somebody's routine, you're used to somebody's routine, yeah, nobody really understands that. So it is theorized at this time that this shooting occurred between 8 p.m. on New Year's Day and 5:20 a.m. on January 2nd. So they had all been deceased for about a day. And it's quite shocking, to say the least. All of these family members were wearing PJs when they were discovered, and Daniel's family and friends are extremely taken aback by what's happened, because this family seemed very happy together. Nothing really was out of the blue. The only thing that has come of this is that Nicholas had a prior of domestic violence, but that was about it. Other than that, he has been unemployed for a few years because he had a back injury. So he was working as a painter sometimes, but not all the times. Not all the time. He was a stay-at-home dad primarily, and he was actually homeschooling the kids. So if we think about it in that aspect, is it the point where we see it a lot with mothers where they have postpartum depression and things like that? Is there actually a term for dads, for stay-at-home dads, where they're, other than being depressed, is there a term for dads to use when they're stuck in that same situation? Because I know moms, and I'm not bringing this full on into gender roles and things like that. So don't read into it that way. Women or those who are in a motherly role, we have that title, if you will, of being able to say we have postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis if we get to that point. I, for one, have had postpartum depression and it is not fun, but that's besides the point. Do dads in that role, obviously they didn't give birth, vaginally or through a C-section, but can they also develop something similar to that? I am not sure. It is definitely something to look into because when you are in that role for a long time with no way of getting out of it, plus you are injured, now you have a new baby coming, it might be exhausting. Might be. Is this something that should be looked into when it comes to Nicholas Arruda? I mean, back in 2014, he was arrested by the West Warwick police for felony domestic violence, but it was dismissed because the victim in that case didn't want to cooperate and it wasn't his wife. So is it just undiagnosed depression that went on for too long when it came to the case of Nicholas Arruda? We don't know. This is all me speculating because I still don't understand. The police still don't understand. Like, we don't know. No, like, if anyone you know or you are experiencing domestic violence or anything of that nature, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline by calling 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233. You can also visit thehotline.org or text love is all caps to 22522. I will also have that in the description box as well. This next one I'm going to discuss is probably going to irritate a lot of people. It irritated me when I saw the news bulletin yesterday while I was working. So, as of this time in Madison, Wisconsin, well, this is reported from Madison, Wisconsin, Morgan Geyser, who has spent 7 years in Winnebago Mental Health Institute, petitioned the circuit judge for Waukesha County, Michael Boren, for release. She has petitioned for release 4 times since June of 2022. She withdrew the first 2 and she was denied the third one, but she's now been granted release. This petition that she put in was in October because now at this time she's 22 years old. At the time of the crime, she was 14, I believe. Oh, no, wait, sorry, she was 12 at the time of her crime, which I'll talk about a little bit. It has been proclaimed that she is completely fine. She would have to set up a plan with DHS to find, DHS is going to help her house her in a group home, supervise her for extra consideration and things like that. They have to set up this plan before she's fully released. They have found that she's no longer a safety risk and she's maximized her treatment options at the facility she was at. Here's the thing. Her crime was so brutal and terrible, it is absolutely outrageous that they're going to allow this person to get out. I do believe that the other one that is involved in this, Anissa Wire, I'm pretty sure that she has also been released as well. Let me just look that up really quick. Because as soon as I talk about what exactly this is, you guys are going to know exactly what crime I'm talking about. Exactly what one I am talking about. I know I've discussed it before as well. And also the charges involved with this too, I don't understand at all. Where is she? I think I'm going to do a whole video on this because this case is insanity. Actually, I'm going to do a whole video on this. So back on March 10th of 2021, Anissa Wire was 19 at the time. She submitted a letter to the court saying she was deeply regretful for the crime she committed, the fear she caused, the agony and pain she caused. And not just to the victim's family, but also to her community. She also goes on to state that she severely hates her actions from May 31st, 2014, and through multiple hours of therapy, she can't hate herself for her actions anymore. She then, what's the word? She's apologized to herself or whatever, whatever. I don't know. She then, on July 1st of 2021, again, the same judge from Waukesha County, Michael Boren, ordered the release of Anissa Weir from Winnebago Mental Health Institute in the same release plan that they are working for with Geyser. So the crime I'm referring to is this Slender Man stabbing. See, here's the thing. Back on May 31st, 2014, this is during a game of hide and seek. We have Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weir. And then we have Peyton Leutner. Peyton Leutner was their friend at the time, and what they did was they lured her into the woods, said they were going to play hide and seek, and then decided to stab her 19 times because Slender Man wanted them to do it, to appease him. Yeah, here's my thing. If you don't know what Slender Man is, it's a creepypasta thing. If I do a video about it, I will. Actually, I think I'm going to. So this took place in a wooded area near David's Park, which is near Waukesha, Wisconsin. Anissa Weir and Morgan Geyser pinned down Peyton Leutner, who went by Bella. And this is also a nickname that was used during the time of the crime. They proceeded to stab her a total of 19 times, but this is between her legs, arms, and torso with a 5-inch blade. 5-inch long blade, I should say. There were wounds to her major organs. She had a stab wound that actually missed one of her major arteries. If it went through that artery, she would have died. She had damage to her liver, her stomach, and her diaphragm as well. After this attack, they literally told Bella to lay there while they found help. They didn't. They just left her there. This is when Bella dragged herself to a nearby road and was found by somebody that was on bicycle or cyclist, and they are the ones that then called 911 and for help. The repair that was needed for the damage to her stomach took 6 hours in an operating room. To repair the damage to her tissues, all of her organs and the tissues in her abdomen and her torso, it was horrific. Just hours after this attack, 5 hours to be exact, this is when Geyser and Weir were apprehended by police at a furniture store on the I-94, which is 4.9 miles away from where the attack happened. They still had the knife on them. It was in a bag they were carrying, and the police found it. They told the police that they were meeting Slender Man at his home, at Slenderman Mansion, which is 200 miles away from where they were apprehended in Nicollet National Forest. Now, during the time they were interrogated, this is when they talk about things. Yeah. She was described as having absolutely no empathy when it came to what she did, and Weir looked very guilty. Like she had that look of, I know I'm guilty, I am so sorry type thing. So she actually empathized with the things that she did. When it comes to their charges, you will understand that notion as to what they got. Yeah, Both of them stated that this tack was needed to help Slender Man and to appease him. Bella was in the hospital for 7 days after the attack, and she actually returned to school in September of that year. So she had the whole summer off to recuperate and to take care of herself. Meanwhile, this entire thing goes bananas. Yes. So Geyser was charged with first-degree homicide, which is a Class A felony, or attempted first-degree homicide. And Weir was charged with second-degree attempted homicide, which is a Class B felony. Because of the nature of their crimes, they were waived out of juvenile court and they were tried as adults, even though they were only 12. But it's due to the nature of the crime. This is why they were tried as an adult. Anissa Weir pled guilty to being a party to attempted second-degree homicide. So she pled guilty. Jury found her not guilty by mental disease or defect. Hence why they were in a psychiatric hospital or mental health institute. Geyser took a plea deal and she agreed to the fact that she would not undergo a trial if she pled guilty and agreed to being evaluated. This is where a lot of people have issues when it comes to psychiatric help and mental health issues when it comes to crimes, because not everybody can be rehabilitated. Not everybody with a mental health issue can be rehabilitated after you commit a crime like this. And this is where the public and the justice system actually have to pay attention to who they release from jail and who they don't release from jail, because 9 times out of 10, they will reoffend. My personal opinion, I don't believe that Morgan Geyser should have been released. I also don't believe she should have gotten a plea deal. I know it was something that was worked with the state attorney and with the whole shebang. I understand that. But when you do something, a crime so heinous like this, you need to be held accountable like other people are. Just because you're 12 doesn't mean you're going to be like, okay, now go hide in a mental institute and be catered to by people that are around you. No. You attacked your friend in the woods to appease a fake character for fun, and then showed absolutely no remorse when you were taken into custody. Nope, doesn't sit right. But I also take a look at things like this. I take a step back. Let me rephrase this. When it comes to crimes like this, I take a further step back and try to be as white flagged as possible or neutral as possible. But when it comes to cases like this, where it involves mental health, being a person that has issues with mental health and people around me that have issues with mental health, it has to be taken more seriously than this. I do understand there's a lot in the background when it comes to these two young individuals, but still, there's no. If it was me arrested for a crime like this, I would be in jail for life. Simple as that. But here's a 12-year-old that, yes, has probably seen some stuff, but who's to say I didn't? It's cases like this that remind me a lot of cases that are very similarly talked about now. And it reminds me of how people are handed things that shouldn't be handed things. And this is a prime example of it. I will say too that Morgan Geyser, she petitioned to have her case looked at as a juvenile. But here's the thing. The state found you competent enough to try you as an adult, so you can't be retried as a juvenile. You also accepted a plea deal as an adult, not as a child. So, yeah. Her attorney, Matthew Pinix, Pinix, said that Morgan Geyser should have been charged with attempted second-degree intentional homicide rather than first degree, and continued to say that the statements that she gave with the investigators or before she had her Miranda rights read to her. Here's the thing. When you're taken into custody, you're read your Miranda rights. When you are, and you're already Mirandized, which is something that cops always have to do. It's part of their job. It's their mandate. And if a cop forgets to do it, then a cop forgets to do it. If there is a new cop in the room, they will then re-Mirandize you. So is there video footage of this interrogation? Because I'm pretty sure if there's video footage, then they're going to be able to tell when and which this cop said her Miranda rights, right? Most of the time, there's always video or there's always camera equipment in every single interrogation room and in the, yeah, just in the office as is, just in case something happens. So I'm pretty sure that she was Mirandized. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure. Friday, January 10th, it was announced that the trial for two that involved the abduction and murder, which also involved the death of a 4-year-old, this has been announced on the 10th. 36-year-old Daniel Callahan and 32-year-old Victoria Fox, both from Tangipahoa Parish in Louisiana. Their trial has been set for both of them, and they stand accused of murdering one child and abducting the other in Mississippi in June of 2024. The victims in question are 4-year-old Erin Burnett, and her 6-year-old sister Jaylee Burnett, both from Loringer, Louisiana, and they were abducted and brought to Mississippi. It is said that these girls were found in the woods on the 13th of June of 2024 near Bouger Drive in South Jackson, Mississippi, which is more than 120 miles away from Loringer. Erin was found deceased from asphyxia due to possibly being suffocated, and Jaylee was found alive. Callahan is suspected of also murdering the children's mother, Callie Brunette, who's 35, and he is suspected of murdering her before the actual abduction occurred. It is said that Callahan and Brunette had an on-again, off-again relationship, and it's speculated and stated that Callahan then approximately stabbed Brunette 30 times. Brunette died due to multiple sharp force injuries and a stab wound around her head, her chest, her neck, her abdomen, and her back. She also had defense wounds on her arms. This is reported by the coroner's office. There is documents that also state that Callahan is facing a federal jury trial in March in New Orleans for the charges of transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal SA, not abuse activity. Kidnapping results in death. There is also reports saying that he has pled not guilty to these charges. In addition, he also faces state charges in both Mississippi and Louisiana, where he could receive the death penalty if convicted. In Mississippi, he had been indicted in July of 2024 for a count of capital murder, 3 counts of sexual battery, 1 count of receiving stolen property in connection to a case, and 2 counts of kidnapping. It is currently unknown whether or not he has actually entered a plea of not guilty or guilty in relation to these charges. In hindsight, Cox, his co-conspirator, is also scheduled to go on trial on March 24th in Jackson, 1 count of murder, a count of sexual battery, and 1 count of kidnapping. She has pled not guilty to all of these charges and also can face the death penalty if being convicted. Callahan was extradited to Louisiana, where in hindsight, Cox is in Hinds County. She remains there. This news was released during a press conference, and the Jackson Police Chief, Joseph Wade, described this crime scene as being horrific and sickening, and the actions of these suspects as that much as well. He still has what he saw of this 4-year-old imprinted in his brain. He can't forget this. He believes that this case, it's right for this to rise as a death penalty case because it definitely deserves to be a death penalty case. What are your thoughts on that? I have many thoughts on the death penalty. So sometimes I feel like there's cases in which we're never going to get a trial from it. And we've been delayed and delayed and delayed. This one is about our favorite Brian right now, Brian Koberger. His defense team wants to have the prosecutor's sanctioned when it comes to the Moscow murder students trial. So the reason by this is let's see. Sorry. They're asking a Boise judge to sanction the prosecutors for inadequately disclosing things during their discovery process and for delaying this case. Interesting. Very interesting. The inadequate disclosures that they are talking about is the things that are greatly prejudicing Mr. Koberger, or Brian, from going through his trial. He's obligated to submit his defense guilt phase by January 23rd of 2025. His defense lawyers, Ann Taylor, Jay Logsden, and Alyssa Massoth, yeah, Massoth, they wrote in a court filing that there is a bulk of expert disclosures that fail to include any reports and opinions, and like there's a multitude of it from the state, apparently. They also believe that these sanctions also must consider the exclusion of these experts because they're just delaying the inevitable, and they cover things at the bare minimum. This order, they want to compel proper disclosure because of the deadline that they have on January 23rd of 2025. So without these disclosures, they argue that they literally have no idea as to what expert evidence the prosecution is willing to use in court. The only thing I believe, the only thing they have disclosed is that they have 25 witnesses, expert witnesses, and the defense for Brian Koberger says that they have only received 5 reports from these expert witnesses. None of them include the DNA that is speculated and talked about. With capital murder cases, nothing is clear and concise. Absolutely nothing about it is clear and concise. The issues involving the experts, the issues involving the DNA, data, anything like that, driving data. When it comes to this case specifically, when it comes to the DNA found at the crime scene on the knife, his fingerprint analysis, pathology, his cell tower coverage, his data on his cell phone, things like that, things of that nature. A lot of these things, a lot of these reports should have already been taken or should have already been submitted. I don't understand why the prosecution is taking so long. His team as well also had a deadline to make its own disclosures when it came to this case as well. And to be fair, the former prosecutor and New Jersey attorney, David Gelman, he's a former prosecutor. He's been following this case, and he says that the defense actually has a point. So if the prosecution violates this, they might not want to, but they have to turn over all evidence, even if it feels like it's not admissible or not, or doesn't involve it or not. But it's not as simple as what the defense is asking for. The defense getting everything, it's not as simple as that. If the state doesn't have any possession of any evidence or evidence that's non-existent and the defense just wants all of it, and you can't sanction the state. Basically, what it sums up to is this man is saying, what are they going to do? Turn it up out of thin air? Like have all of this evidence just pop out of nowhere? If the state hasn't proved it yet, if the state has it, then they've proven it. If they don't have it, then they can't prove it. So it basically what it comes down to is what the state has, turn it in. If the state doesn't have it, I'm sorry, you can't use it. That's the basis of this. That's the basics of my understanding, which is what they should be following. The court can impose proper and more strict sanctions down the line when it comes to this, which is what his defense team has already asked for. And this is also reported by another former federal prosecutor, Niyama Ramani, who's also following this case as well. There is a strategic reason as to why the defense is doing this as well. If it's in agreement with the judge that the prosecution hasn't complied with its discovery and its obligations with this, the judge then can sanction the prosecution because they haven't put forth the evidence they said they have. And if one of these sanctions go into effect, the death penalty is off the table. So it's smart for his defense team to look at it this way. This is the same thing that happened with Lori Vallow, and the judge in that case took the death penalty off the table because prosecution kept delaying turning over evidence. If this happens with this case, this means that Bryan Kohberger's case is no longer a death penalty case. He would be in jail for the rest of his life if proven guilty. Again, if you are not aware, although most people are, you were innocent until proven guilty. So typically, or at this point, Bryan Kohberger is still innocent in a court of law. In the court, you are to prove him guilty. That is the point of somebody going to trial. He stands charged of 4 first-degree murder charges and felony burglary in connection to the stabbing of the 4 students involved in November of 2022. We all know this case very well, and a lot of things have been talked about very well when it comes to this. So this case is just, there's a whole lot when it comes to this, and I say this as like me being somebody that's dying to see this, which that's even sad of me to say that, but the families of these victims have been waiting for 3 years. This year is 3 years. 2.5 years for this trial to start, since the deaths of their loved ones. Is there not a way for this to, go swiftly? I know things take time, but still, Kohberger and his defense team are the ones that waived the right to a speedy trial, which is what everybody else wanted, from what I gather. So why is prosecution delaying it? That's my question. Sherry Franke, the daughter of Ruby Franke, has released a memoir. The title of this memoir is The House of My Mother. It was released on Tuesday, and it goes over it talks about the last conversation she had with her mother prior to her mother being arrested for child abuse on her siblings. There's a lot of things that apparently she discusses in this book. I'm actually very intrigued, and I really want to read this. So within the last conversation or interaction, if you will, Ruby saw Sherry's Instagram story and asked her, "Can you promise not to talk about this on social media anymore?" Sherry just simply responded, "No." That was the last word she actually said to her mother before her mother was arrested. And this is what she talks about in her memoir. This was obviously reported and things like that. We know who Ruby Franke is. The falling from grace, disgraced YouTube mommy from 8 Passengers. She had over 2.5 million subscribers before the downfall on social media. This YouTube channel, 8 Passengers, was the majority of the family's income due to them having 6 children and things like that. One video, all it took was one video to take down this channel. And it cost their family 90% of their income. This is reported by Sherry Franke in her book, The House of My Mother. After this video, they started losing brand deals, they started losing subscribers and things like that. So it's not just Ruby Frankie that it took a toll on, it also took a toll on the elder children who were actually those that were receiving a income from this YouTube channel. So we have parents and we have the older siblings. Yeah. I still don't like, I remember watching some of these videos because I used to see Eight Passengers pop up on YouTube, and I never really like, there was something about her face that like irked me the wrong way. And don't get me wrong, I still actually I think there's only one person that I watch primarily that shows her kids, but her kids know her channel's not about them. It's about her, and that's Sarah Ray Vargas. I love her. And she keeps it real. She won't shit like talk you. She won't pull you through a loop, things like that. She tells you like it is, and I completely understand it, and I love it. Whereas we have people like this who use their kids for monetization, who lie, in all intents and purposes, they basically lie to your face and fake it until they make it. And that's what Ruby Frankie did, is she faked it till she made it, and everything started crumbling. In this book as well, Sherry describes when Jody Hildebrandt came into the picture, she became a central point of the family's lives. She moved in with the family after Sherry left college. Ruby offered Jody Sherry's room. This is after Sherry left for college. Sherry describes Jody and her like circle of friends as being a cult. She also talks about the relationship that quickly like became prevalent between the two, between Ruby and Jody. And she talked about how Jody encouraged Kevin and Ruby to distance themselves while she convinced Ruby to share a bed with her. Not just any bed, Sherry's bed. So Jody and Ruby were sleeping in Sherry's bed together, and Kevin slept in the master bedroom alone. Mm, it's giving me very like sex cult type thing, which is, yeah, Nixum. I think that's the sex cult or a prevalent cult with, I don't know. Anywho, besides the point. Jody apparently suffered from delusions and visions while she stayed at the Frankie's home, and Ruby and Kevin aided her through them. And yeah, I I don't know. Apparently they were always upstairs. Jody and Ruby were always upstairs in their sanctuary, except for when they left to go to Dairy Queen. Mm, mm, Interesting. Their dietary habits were very strange. They had a ton of sugar, fried foods, and the fried foods that they had were literally covered with ranch dressing, gallons of ranch dressing. A cardiologist would find this insane. When Ruby and Jody went on shopping trips to Mexico, they would come home with bags upon bags of pills that Ruby claimed was a plan to keep up with antibiotics for the end of days. There's the cult-like stuff coming out. Yeah. There's a whole lot. That a whole lot. Yeah. Apparently, when Sherry came home from college for a holiday one year, her brother said to her at the door, "Hey sis, welcome to hell." What a strange way to be welcomed back home after coming home from college. Yeah. I mm, it's also stated too that inside of Jody Hildebrandt's $5.3 million Ivan's home, where Ruby and the two younger children that are involved in the case that they were found guilty of, there is a panic room in this home. Why do you need a panic room? I know people believe in the end of days and doomsday preppers and things like that, which this is giving very much Lori Vallow and all of that jazz and Chad Daybell. But still, why do you need a panic room? Are you that in fear of your life? I don't understand. So, needless to say, I'm extremely interested in reading this book. I want this book. I'm probably going to go grab this book so I can read it. And I'm just very intrigued as to what Sherry has to say when it comes to what she's experienced. I will say too, the picture of Sherry Frankie on the front of the picture, it looks like she's wearing basically it looks like she's wearing something she would in prison. It looks like a prison uniform. And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, but at the same time, it's a shock value. Like the front of the book, it's white, and the picture of Sherry is her sitting on a chair. She elbows on her knees and her feet are up on the chair, and it looks like she's wearing kind of like scrubs, like if you will. So military, not military, prison style attire that is scrubs like, and it's all in font. There, I'm actually surprised that her editor let this go without having capital letters at the start of this title, but whatever. And it says, "The House of My Mother, a Daughter's Quest for Freedom," and then her name at the bottom. Yeah. Sherry writes in this that there's no apology for years of torment and exploitation that came before Jody. So, yeah, just think about that before you become a family vlogger and things like that. Meanwhile, in California, there have been new charges filed against a convicted rapist and kidnapper in connection to a 2015 abduction and ransom case that involves three people in the Bay Area. The cops have had never been told about this stuff, apparently, until this man confessed to a small town chief. And this chief had no connection to any of these investigations. Apparently, Matthew Mueller has three new charges against him. He's 47 years old. He is serving a 40-year prison sentence when it comes to the rape and kidnapping of a woman from Vallejo in 2015. So her abduction was thought to be a hoax at first, but now it has been dubbed the Gone Girl kidnapping after the very successful book and movie. I have the book. It is so good. I love the book. I do believe that the movie did it justice, but the book is great in my opinion. So Mueller is alleged to have kidnapped two unidentified men and one woman in San Ramon and hold them hostage until there was a ransom paid of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, until like that ransom was paid, then they were released. This man, let's see, what else? Apparently, this happened in a case in 2009. He is actually a Harvard alumni, a Marine vet, and he's also a former immigration attorney. So this is terrifying. He's been disbarred. Yeah, the case in question we were talking about is, well, the other case that he is prevalently known for is the abduction and rape of Denise Huskins. And let's see, there's more. I remember when Denise Huskins' case first became like really prevalent in March of 2015, and a lot of people didn't believe her and her husband, Aaron Quinn. I also remember, I believe it was True Crime Society podcast talked about it as well, where we've had a lot of cases of like mistaken or faked kidnapping, things like that. So like Sherry Papini, and then there was a lady from down south, things like that, where you don't know if they're actually like lying or not. And this is one of those cases where we have to take it at face value. A lot of people should just take these cases at face value, and they don't. And unfortunately, a lot of people reap the consequences of that. In this case, there was an actual person that committed this kidnapping and unfortunately the rape of this woman. And this is a very bizarre case and things like that. So, in a the Contra Costa investigators, or the Contra Costa District Attorney's Office, filed 3 felony charges of kidnapping for ransom against Matthew Daniel Mueller, who would, like I said, is a convicted rapist and kidnapper who is currently serving a 40-year federal sentence. This statement was released on Monday. So the date of this, this past Monday is when this was released. So this article was published on the 8th, so just a few days prior. So we are talking about the 6th when this was talked about publicly. The Mueller began to confess to additional crimes that go back to 1993 when he was just 16 years old. And this was also talked about by Ted Osregadoo, who is a public informant officer for the DA's office. And over a course of the communication that they had with Mueller, there was a 2015 unreported kidnapping and ransom that they were talking about, the Contra Costa County. This was mentioned by Mueller. There is a bunch of other information that they are looking into. Obviously, the new charges that stem from this crime. And he's also suspected in 2 additional home invasions in 2009. And they are looking to the DNA testing to tie him to these cases. He's also confessed to 3 other crimes that he's revealed in letters in which he's exchanged with law enforcement. Very, like, this case is so wild. So if he's convicted on any of these other crimes, he could face life in prison. He's currently serving the 40-year prison sentence in Arizona, but he has to be brought to California to be arraigned on these new charges. There is no specific court date set for this yet, but he has been charged for this. So the Denise Hoskins case that I talked about is where he broke into their home in South Lake Tahoe, tied her up. Oh, wait, no. Broke into their home, drugged her and her boyfriend, tied her up, brought her to a cabin in South Lake Tahoe, and then essayed her, held her for 2 days, and then drove her back to Southern California and just let her go. Yeah, this is why this case, the Denise Hoskins case, was so bizarre, because they didn't believe her boyfriend, they didn't believe her, and I remember when it was out publicly, it was just really wild to watch and to read about and to see everything that was being covered about it. Like I mentioned in my 2024 True Crime Recap, we have the giant case of the death of the United Healthcare CEO. So Luigi Mangione is the person that stands accused of this unfortunate death. Well, he's come back into the limelight, if you will. So this man has now retained the same exact consultant that was used by Harvey Weinstein. So this consultant they are talking about is Craig Rothfeld. He is a former professional finance person who consulted Harvey Weinstein and fellow other white-collar defendants. And this is after he himself did a stint in jail for tax fraud, for investment in tax fraud. So it's stated, obviously, he has firsthand knowledge of the New York City Department of Corrections and the Community Supervision whole department. Yeah, back in 2015, Craig Rothfield and 2 of his associates were convicted of defrauding 15 investors of $11 million. He was accused also of falsifying records, his business records, and he received a 1.5 to 4.5 year prison sentence. So he has been brought in to consult with Luigi Mangione. Luigi Mangione is being held without bail in Brooklyn at this time. The spokesperson for the defense team for Luigi Mangione has also declined any comments when it comes to Fox News and any other news outlet. This includes the New York Post as well. They also know that, I mean, he's been full on hired. He's not just somebody that they are using pro bono, if you will. They have hired him for his expertise. In addition to consulting different defendants from indictment to sentencing. They also consult them on ins and outs of like defense attorneys, their court filings, and things like that. So basically, he's kind of like a support personnel, if you will, which is definitely interesting. So Luigi Mangione has been accused of the December 4th assassination of Brian Thompson just outside of a hotel where his company was supposed to be holding a conference later that morning, which it was an investor conference he was supposed to be holding. So Brian Thompson was actually from Minnesota, and he traveled from Minnesota to New York City for this event. Following the assassination of Brian Thompson, this is when a 5-day manhunt happened in regards to finding the assailant, and this is when they found Luigi Mangione at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where the workers and some customers recognized him from the wanted poster. And that's when they turned him in. This is when they found a 3D printed gun. The murder weapon, which is a ghost gun, which had a 3D printed receiver and suppressor, also had a fake ID, and the fake ID is the one that was used at a Manhattan hostel before the shooting occurred. So Mangione actually faces a multitude of charges, which includes terrorism at a state level, stalking in a stalking murder in a federal court, and first-degree murder. He also faces lesser charges of criminal possession of a firearm in New York and Pennsylvania and carrying a forged identification. Like I said, he's being held without bail at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. So, yeah. Also, if you don't know who Harvey Weinstein is, who was helped by Rothfeld, Harvey Weinstein is a former movie mogul who was convicted of sex crimes in 2020. His conviction was overturned, and he's still awaiting a new trial for facing additional indictments. Yeah. Crazy, crazy doodads. I did also want to talk about the New Orleans truck runover situation. Yeah, and the Tesla truck bombing that happened in Vegas. I'm going to briefly touch on this because I don't like to talk about politics at all. And this happened literally right after the new year, especially where one happened where our president was supposed to be right outside of Trump Tower, and then the other one is through New Orleans on Bourbon Street. It's very, and where it was both Cybertrucks, Tesla Cybertrucks, which is strange. Both of them were rented by the same app, Turo. It's mind blowing, and both are deemed as terroristic threats as well. Yeah. Turo is teaming up with investigators for both of these incidences because obviously they don't want a bad rap for these things. Yeah, it's mind blowing. So we had a Ford pickup truck. So it was a Ford pickup truck on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, and then we had the Tesla Cybertruck in Las Vegas. Both were rented and both involved with US born ex-military servicemen who both served in Afghanistan in the same time frame. They don't appear to have any known connection between one another. There's no definitive link between them, which is something that was reported by Christopher Raya, who is an FBI official. Let's see. The company is actively partnering with law enforcement for both incidences. The CEO for Turo, Andre Haddad, released a statement on Friday detailing how they're cooperating with the authorities, which is great that they did this. Let's see. According to the company, this company is 12 years old. It said that in the entire history of rentals, it includes 27 million bookings spanning 8.6 million miles driven, and they have had 0.10% have ended in a serious incident or a vehicle theft. So despite this record, it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. They don't believe that either renter is involved in the Vegas or the New Orleans attacks, had a criminal background that would have indicated them as a security threat. So I guess they go through these people's backgrounds before they allow them to rent these cars. They are completely outraged by the misuse of the marketplace for the acts of these two individuals. I understand that very well. So apparently, Turo relies on its proprietary risk score when it comes to potential renters, and it relies on more than 50 different inputs of data for these customers. And this information is submitted by the customer who is trying to rent. Every renter is screened in a multi-layer data science-based trust and process. These individuals are questioned, their licenses are looked into, they have background checks, and they look into whether they were discharged from the military or not. These individuals in question had clean backgrounds, they were honorably discharged, and they had valid driver's licenses. They also could have boarded any plane, rented any car from a different rental chain, but they chose Turo. They don't believe that they had been flagged by anybody from law enforcement or any other rental place either. So there's, it's just very, it's different looking at it from outsides looking in. So the driver in the New Orleans attack on Bourbon Street is 42-year-old. His last name is Jabbar. Hold on. I don't have his first name. Let me see. Let me see. It's really sad that this attack already has a Wikipedia page. All right, so our person in question, Shamsud Din Jabbar, 42-year-old American-born resident of Houston, Texas. He had a Islamic State flag or an ISIS flag found in his truck, and this situation is being investigated as domestic terrorism. There's no evidence of any direction foreignly when it comes to this attack. Jabbar himself has been posting videos pledging his allegiance to ISIS and his radicalization just hours before this attack. Yeah. So what happened was this. He rented an electric Ford pickup truck from Turo in Houston on the 30th of December of 2024. He then drove it to New Orleans on the 31st, and on January 1st, this is when he went by the barriers on Bourbon Street that are placed there so no cars can go down. And he also bypassed patrol cars and law enforcement before he drove into a sidewalk and killed at least 14 people and injured many others. Yes. So, yeah. There was also apparently another occurrence, let's see, where Matthew Allen Livelsberger, who is an active U.S. Army Special Forces intelligence sergeant who served in Germany, he was on leave in Colorado at the time of the incident. He also rented his Cybertruck from Turo in Denver. That Cybertruck as well. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the same man. So this is the second incident. I don't know why I sounded so confused when I was talking about that. Never mind. It's because I didn't see this man's name. So Matthew Livelsberger, he rented a Tesla Cybertruck in Denver, and then he drove to Las Vegas, where he pulled up to Trump Hotel, and this is in front of the glass entrance doors, and this was on New Year's. Smoke started coming from the vehicle, and then there was a loud explosion. Apparently, gas and fuel canisters and firework mortars were found in the back of the truck after the explosion, and the explosion happened within 15 minutes of the vehicle pulling up to the building. The explosion, which is still being investigated as an act of terrorism, killed said person, Matthew Livelsberger, beyond burnt recognition, is how he was found. They did find his military IDs, passport, and credit cards in the vehicle, along with several other firearms. Yeah, apparently Elon Musk went on to X and said that the structure of the Tesla Cybertruck is what helped limit the damage. Apparently, there's a built-in mechanism for the Cybertruck to contain explosion and directed the blast upwards instead of outwards. So not even the glass doors of the lobby were broken due to this explosion. Yeah. The identification of the body was determined by the coroner after the discovery of the body inside of the car. So this explosion killed the driver and then injured 7 others outside of the vehicle. Like I said, like I mentioned, this is being investigated as a possible act of terrorism. But yeah, it's a whole lot of craziness to start the year off. I'm sure this year is just going to get even more crazy. And just like my 2024 true crime recap for the year, we're ending this video with an update about John Ramsey, JonBenet Ramsey's dad. And he was very vigilant when it came to talking and discussing about how he's recentered his life after he lost not just one, but 2 children. So if you don't know, JonBenet and her brother Burke have older siblings. So her sister Beth unfortunately passed away in a car accident in 1992. This is John Ramsey's oldest child from his first wife. And in 1996 when JonBenet was murdered, unfortunately. So it's come out in the news that John Ramsey, he was absolutely devastated, not just for the first 4 years following Beth's death, but then losing JonBenet. So he really, which this sounds like very typical, this is going to sound really bad, but atypical white person of following their faith and turning to God, or just simply stating he then turned to his faith to help him grieve. He has talked about where he sees there's more to life than living here on earth, and he has found that his faith has helped him grieve in a positive way over a multitude of years. That after he lost JonBenet and Beth, he lost everything. And not to say that he didn't have his wife. He had Patsy, he had Burke, other he had his other children, but with a significant age gap between Burke and his older siblings and JonBenet, it's kind of hard to understand as to exactly what each is going through. Because you have the age gap, each person is at a different point in their life. We have Burke who's younger and we have his older siblings. So, and also you have John and Patsy and you have his ex-wife and everybody else that's involved. Because it doesn't just hit your nuclear family, it also hits your extended family. John would go on to say that following the death of JonBenet, they didn't have a Christmas tree, they didn't decorate the house. They just went through the days because the death of JonBenet happened in such a joyful time of year for most. This was their darkest time of year, and it's okay to understand that from an outside perspective. John goes on to say that for about 3 years, celebrating Christmas was one of those things that was kind of like absent from their life. And they all agreed that, okay, that's why we need to do it for Burke's sake, to ease into celebrating again, not just to like full-fledged, like sock him in the face with it. Obviously, we know that JonBenet's case has never been solved. I hope it will be solved, but it has yet to be solved. It's just this I know I've talked about it before. This case is just ultra horrifying because there's so much negligence when it comes to this crime and this crime scene involving the death of this young child that nobody really put two and two together or really thought that something like this could happen, and it did. And unfortunately, it's affected this family. I mean, Patsy, she's in heaven with John Bonet, like I stated in my 2024 recap. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. But she's crossed over. She's with her daughter. She's with her husband's first child, Beth, that passed away. So Patsy on the other side has clarification as to what happened to her daughter. John still doesn't, neither does Burke, neither does their older sibling, neither does the rest of their family. So there's still that hindrance when it comes to things that should be done. Apparently, there's more than 20 pieces of evidence that have never been tested in the John Benet Ramsey case, which is mind-boggling. And I don't understand why these things haven't been tested. Apparently, previously, John Ramsey told Fox News that he planned to meet with the Boulder PD in January to discuss the DNA testing. So I'm hoping that this comes soon because he's been in pursuit of this and hopeful of this for a long time. And he just wants answers, as any other grieving parent does when it comes to a case against their children or their child. They want answers. John Ramsey has gone years without answers when it comes to the death of his daughter. And it's time for him to have the answers that their family needs to fully close that chapter of their life, that chapter of their life, sorry. It's that closure that anybody needs when it comes to the death of their loved one. If you've ever been through death, grieving is a hard process. I've lost many people in my lifetime, many. There was one year where I think I went to upwards of 20 funerals of people that I knew, family, friends, things like that. It was just really sad of me to say, but it's very true. So I understand the grief aspect. Was somebody that's always had death as a prevalent thing in my life, coming from a giant family on both sides, from both of my parents. I have a very large family. So it's one of those things where grief is normalized for me. Celebrating happy things like marriages and things like that wasn't always something that was normalized. And I understood that more when it came to like my wedding and things like that, because it's not a constant. The notion of grief has been the constant for this family for years. And it's time to close that chapter and hopefully get the resolve that they deserve. All right, everybody, so that's going to wrap up my true crime recap for this week. I will have some standalone videos when it comes to regular cases coming out as well. Don't just think I'm going to do true crime recaps this year. So with that being said, I hope you like this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn your post notifications on to all. That way you know whenever I upload, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.